Growing up, I always knew I was the second choice. My name is Emma, and from my earliest memories, I watched my parents shower my older brother Michael with endless attention and opportunities while I stood in the shadows. The difference in how they treated us wasn't subtle, it was as clear as day. I remember sitting at our kitchen table, doing homework alone, while Mom and Dad drove Michael to his latest singing competition or club meeting. He was 3 years older than me, and somehow that made him more deserving of everything. Every time his teachers mentioned even the slightest talent, my parents jumped at the chance to nurture it, spending money we didn't really have on lessons and equipment. Michael has such a beautiful voice, Mom would gush to anyone who would listen. He's going to be something special one day. Meanwhile, I learned early on not to ask for much. When I showed interest in art classes, Mom just smiled apologetically. Maybe next semester, honey. Michael's voice lessons are taking up the budget right now. The disparity became even more apparent during Michael's senior year of high school. I was 15 at the time, sitting quietly at dinner when my parents made their big announcement. "We've been saving up," Dad said proudly, "and we're going to send Michael to Preston College. It's one of the most prestigious schools in the state." Michael's eyes lit up. "Really? That's amazing." "And that's not all," Mom added. "You can stay in our apartment near the campus. No rent, of course. We want you to focus on your studies." I pushed my peas around my plate, trying to hide my disappointment. Not that anyone was looking at me anyway. They were all focused on Michael's beaming face as he talked about his future plans. That night, lying in bed, I did the math. If they were spending this much on Michael's education and giving him a free apartment, there was no way they'd have anything left for my college fund. The realization hit me hard, but instead of crying, I started planning. The next day, I visited my grandparents' antique store. My grandfather listened as I explained my situation. "Well, Emma," he said, studying me carefully, "I could just give you the money for college." He paused, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "But I think it would be better if you earned it yourself. How would you like to work here after school?" So that's how it started. While Michael packed up for his prestigious college adventure, I began working at the antique store. Every afternoon after school, I'd help catalog items, assist customers, and learn the business from my grandfather. My grandmother would bring me snacks and tell me stories about the vintage pieces we sold. My parents' reaction to my initiative was telling. When I told them about my job and my plans to save for college, they seemed relieved, almost grateful that I'd solved my own problem. 3 years of working at my grandparents' antique store flew by. Every afternoon spent dusting old furniture and organizing vintage jewelry had paid off. I'd saved enough money for college. When I graduated high school, there wasn't much fanfare, just a quiet dinner at home. But I didn't mind, I was proud of what I'd accomplished on my own. I enrolled in the local state college, choosing a practical business program that wouldn't drain my savings. The tuition was reasonable, and I even had some money left over. Living at home and taking the bus to campus wasn't glamorous, but it made financial sense. "Mom, Dad," I broached the subject one evening, "I've been thinking about getting a used car. It would make getting to classes easier." Dad barely looked up from his phone. "Sorry, Emma. We just don't have the money for that right now." Mom chimed in, "The bus system is perfectly fine. Lots of students use it." I bit my tongue, remembering how they'd helped Michael get his license and even contributed to his first car. But that was ancient history now. My first year of college passed quickly, and just as I was finishing my spring finals, our house erupted with excitement. Michael was graduating from Preston College. Mom and Dad threw him an elaborate celebration, inviting what felt like half the town. Our house was packed with relatives, friends, and neighbors, all there to celebrate my brother's achievement. I was arranging appetizers in the kitchen when Michael made his grand entrance with a pretty blonde woman on his arm. Sarah, his college girlfriend. They were beaming as they walked into the room, hand in hand. "Everyone," Michael announced, commanding immediate attention, "Sarah and I have some exciting news. We're engaged." The room exploded with cheers and congratulations. Mom burst into tears of joy, and Dad clapped Michael on the back so hard I thought he might fall over. "But wait, there's more," Sarah added, her voice sweet as honey. "After the wedding, we'll be moving to Connecticut. My parents own a successful business there, and they want us to take it over." Mom's tears turned into full-on sobbing. "My baby boy, a successful businessman. That's my son," Dad proclaimed proudly. "Always knew you were destined for great things." I stood in the corner, watching the scene unfold. Nobody seemed to notice that I'd just finished my freshman year with a 4.0 GPA, or that I'd been working part-time at a local cafe while maintaining my studies. But I was used to it by now. The wedding preparations consumed the next year. While I focused on my studies, now in my third year, Mom and Dad threw themselves into planning the perfect wedding for their perfect son. They took out a substantial loan to cover everything: the venue, the catering, the flowers, the band. Nothing was too good for Michael and Sarah. The wedding itself was exactly what you'd expect: extravagant, emotional, and all about Michael. I stood in my bridesmaid dress, which I had to pay for myself, watching my parents beam with pride as they danced with the happy couple. They'd spared no expense, even though I knew they'd be paying off the loan for years to come. After Michael and Sarah left for Connecticut, I stood in my cramped bedroom at my parents' house, staring at my textbooks. An idea struck me: the apartment where Michael had lived during college was now empty. It was perfectly located near campus, and it would give me some much-needed independence. I approached my parents that evening while they were watching TV. "Mom, Dad, since Michael's apartment is empty now, would it be okay if I moved in there?" They exchanged glances before Mom spoke. "Well, honey, you can move in, but you'll need to pay rent." The words hit me like a slap in the face. Rent? But Michael lived there for free. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his recliner. "That was different. We have the wedding loan to pay off now. We need the extra income." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I'm your daughter too," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I've never asked you for anything. I worked for my college money. I take the bus everywhere. Mom held up her hand to stop me. She and Dad had one of their silent conversations, the kind they used to have when deciding whether to spend money on another of Michael's activities. "Fine," Mom finally said. "We'll charge you half the normal rent." I wanted to argue more, but I knew this was the best offer I'd get. "Okay, I'll take it." That weekend, I moved into the apartment. It still had traces of Michael everywhere: holes in the walls from his college posters, water rings on the coffee table from his late-night study sessions. I took extra shifts at the cafe to cover the rent, often working until closing time. Between classes, studying, and work, I barely had time to sleep. My final year of college passed in a blur of textbooks, coffee shop aprons, and midnight study sessions. Before I knew it, graduation day arrived. While my classmates' families planned parties and celebrations, my parents opted for a quiet dinner at home. They only invited my grandparents, no extended family, no friends, no elaborate catering like Michael's graduation. We sat around the dining room table, eating the lasagna I'd made myself. Grandma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Emma, dear, we're so proud of you," she said warmly. "Graduating with highest honors while working part-time, that's quite an achievement." Before I could respond, Mom's phone buzzed. Her face lit up as she read the message. "Oh, speaking of achievements," she interrupted, "Michael just texted. The business is doing wonderfully. He says they're expanding into 2 new locations." I watched as my graduation dinner turned into a celebration of Michael's success in Connecticut. My grandparents exchanged knowing looks, and Grandpa squeezed my shoulder supportively. My hard work in college paid off sooner than I expected. Within 2 weeks of graduation, I landed a position at Anderson & Mitchell, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. The starting salary was better than I dared hope for, and I was thrilled to finally be starting my career. That excitement lasted exactly 3 days, until my parents found out about my salary. Emma, Mom said during one of her unexpected visits to the apartment, now that you're making good money, you should start paying the full rent amount. I stared at her, wondering if I'd heard correctly. But we agreed on half. That was when you were a student, she replied matter-of-factly. You can afford it now. I wanted to point out that Michael had lived here for free even after getting a job, but I'd learned that comparing myself to my brother was pointless. The apartment's location was perfect, just a 10-minute walk from my office, so I reluctantly agreed. Life fell into a routine. I threw myself into my work, determined to prove my worth at the company. Every month, like clockwork, Mom would call. Emma, dear, just reminding you about the rent. It's due on Friday. We're counting on that money. 3 years passed this way. I earned a significant promotion and raise, but I kept that information to myself. I'd learned my lesson, any hint of financial success would just lead to more demands from my parents. Through their occasional updates, I heard that Michael and Sarah had a baby boy. I'd seen pictures on social media, but hadn't visited. Our communication had dwindled to perfunctory birthday messages and holiday greetings. I was fine with that. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Emma? Mom's voice was tight with tension. We need to talk about your brother. There's been some trouble. The business, well, it's gone bankrupt. He had a terrible fight with Sarah's parents. They're furious about how he managed things. They're not speaking anymore. I closed my eyes, already knowing where this was heading. He's coming back home, she continued. With Sarah and the baby. Oh, I said carefully. I assume he'll be staying with you and Dad? Actually, Mom paused. That apartment you're in is quite large. He'll be staying there. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. What? Mom, this is my home. I've been living here for years. Don't be dramatic, Emma. Your brother needs help. He doesn't have any money right now, so he'll stay there for free. You can keep paying the rent. That's absurd, I protested. If he's moving in, maybe I should just find my own place. Don't you dare, Mom's voice turned sharp. We need your rent money now more than ever. Michael's going through a rough time, you wouldn't want to make things harder for him, would you? I shook my head in disbelief and hung up without another word. The moving day was worse than I'd imagined. Michael, Sarah, and their crying baby Tommy showed up with a mountain of luggage and baby equipment. Mom arrived to supervise the transition, which apparently meant making my life as uncomfortable as possible. Emma, clear out your room, Mom directed, hands on her hips. Michael and Sarah need it for Tommy's nursery. I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, my personal space for the past 4 years. What? Where am I supposed to sleep? The living room has a perfectly good couch, she replied, already starting to move my things. You can't be serious. I pay rent here, full rent, and you're putting me on the couch. Mom's expression hardened. Don't be selfish, Emma. Your brother has a baby. Babies need proper rooms. So I watched helplessly as my bedroom was transformed into a nursery, complete with a crib, changing table, and all the other baby paraphernalia. My belongings were unceremoniously piled in a corner of the living room, which was now my bedroom. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Michael moped around the apartment all day, alternating between complaining about his in-laws and reminiscing about his glory days as a successful businessman. Sarah spent her time either crying or arguing with Michael about whose turn it was to change Tommy's diaper. The baby seemed to sense the tension and cried constantly. I'd come home from a long day at work to find dishes piled in the sink, toys scattered everywhere, and dirty laundry spilling out of the hamper. The first few times, I tried ignoring the mess, but the dirty dishes attracted ants, and the clutter made it impossible to relax in what was now my bedroom. So I cleaned, I cooked, I did laundry. And every meal I prepared mysteriously disappeared before I could eat it. One evening, after a particularly frustrating day at work, I decided to extend an olive branch. Michael, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral, we actually have some openings at my company. I could put in a good word for you with HR. The benefits are great, and the starting salary is decent. Michael looked up from his phone, his face twisting with indignation. An entry-level position? Are you kidding me? I'm a businessman, Emma, I don't do entry-level. I need an executive position, something worthy of my experience. Your experience running a business into the ground? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Michael's face turned red. You don't know anything about what happened. That was my in-laws' fault. They set me up to fail. He stormed off to his room, my old room, leaving me standing there, wondering how much longer I could live like this. 3 months into our forced cohabitation, I sat at my kitchen table, now covered in Tommy's dried baby food and Sarah's coffee rings, reviewing my bank statements. The numbers didn't lie, my expenses had nearly doubled since Michael and his family moved in. That was the final push I needed to call my parents. I rehearsed what I would say, determined to remain calm and rational. The phone conversation went about as well as expected. Mom, Dad, we need to talk about the living situation, I began. Michael and Sarah aren't contributing anything to the household expenses. They're eating all my food, using utilities I pay for, and… Emma, Mom cut me off, her voice sharp. I can't believe how selfish you're being. Your brother lost everything. His in-laws betrayed him. He has a baby to take care of. Dad's voice joined in from the background. You should be grateful you're in a position to help family. But that's just it, I pressed on. I'm not just helping, I'm carrying the entire financial burden. They don't buy groceries, they don't. Enough, Mom snapped. Your brother is going through a difficult time. This isn't forever. You need to be more understanding. That night, I opened my laptop and started searching for apartments. I bookmarked several promising options, all within walking distance of my office. Just in case, I told myself. Just in case things get worse. Things got worse exactly 2 weeks later. I was sitting on my couch bed, trying to focus on work documents while Tommy wailed in the background and Michael and Sarah had their fourth argument of the day. The doorbell rang, and my parents walked in without waiting for anyone to answer. Mom had that look on her face, the one she used to get right before announcing Michael had been enrolled in another expensive program. Dad stood behind her, avoiding eye contact. Emma, we need to discuss the rent, Mom announced. I looked up from my laptop. I paid this month's rent on time, as always. Yes, but starting next month, we're doubling it. The room fell silent, even Tommy stopped crying. I stared at my mother, certain I had misheard. Double? But I'm already paying the full market rate. Mom gestured around the apartment. Well, now there are more people living here. More wear and tear on the property. More utilities being used. It's only fair that the rent reflects that. Fair? I couldn't help but laugh. How is it fair that I should pay double rent for being forced to sleep on a couch in my own living room? If anyone should pay more, it should be Michael. He's the one who… I'm not paying anything, Michael jumped up from his chair. This is ridiculous. I lost everything, and now you want me to pay rent? Of course not, sweetie, Mom soothed, before turning back to me with a harder expression. Emma, you have a good job. You can afford this. Your brother needs time to get back on his feet. I looked at each of their faces, Mom's stern expectation, Dad's awkward avoidance, Michael's entitled indignation, Sarah's smug satisfaction. 3 months of built-up frustration threatened to explode, but I swallowed it down. Instead, I simply nodded. Fine, I said quietly. Double rent, starting next month. Mom's face broke into a satisfied smile. She and Dad left shortly after, clearly pleased with how smoothly their announcement had gone. They had no idea they'd just given me the push I needed to finally make my decision. Later that evening, while trying to read a book on my uncomfortable couch bed, I overheard Michael and Sarah talking in the kitchen. They were trying to whisper, but their excitement made them careless. Can you believe it? Sarah giggled. Your mom just told me they're going to give us half of Emma's rent money every month. Michael's smug reply made my blood boil. Of course they are. They understand we need help right now. Emma makes plenty of money, she can support us for a while. This is perfect, Sarah continued. We get to live here for free, and we'll even have spending money. Your sister doesn't need to know. I lay there, gripping my book so hard my knuckles turned white. All this time, I'd thought my parents were just being unfair, but this was a calculated scheme. They weren't just enabling Michael, they were actively planning to use me to fund his laziness. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the apartment listings I'd bookmarked. One caught my eye, a modern one-bedroom in a quiet building, actually closer to my office than the current apartment. The rent was exactly what I'd been paying before the proposed increase. I called the number immediately, trying to keep my voice down. Hi, I'm interested in the apartment on Cedar Street. Yes, I could come see it right now if that's possible. Perfect, I'll be there in 15 minutes. The apartment was everything I hoped for, clean, quiet, and Michael-free. I signed the lease on the spot and paid the security deposit with my emergency savings. Back at the apartment, I waited until everyone was asleep before quietly packing my essential belongings into 2 large suitcases. I left my furniture, it wasn't worth the hassle, and I could buy new pieces that didn't have memories of this mess attached to them. The next morning, I wheeled my suitcases to the door while Michael sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through job listings he had no intention of applying to. Going somewhere? He asked, barely looking up. Month-long business trip, I lied smoothly. Big project in our Cincinnati office. He just grunted, already uninterested. I moved into my new apartment that evening, ordering takeout and sitting on the floor of my empty living room. The silence was beautiful. No crying baby, no arguing couple, no guilt-tripping parents. Just peace. For the next month, I lived quietly in my new home. I bought a comfortable bed, a cozy couch that wasn't a bed, and kitchen supplies that only I would use. I cooked meals that stayed in my refrigerator until I ate them. I slept through the night without being awakened by Tommy's crying. Then, right on schedule, my phone rang with my mother's number. Emma, she snapped without preamble, why haven't you sent the full rent payment? We agreed on double, remember? I couldn't help but laugh. Actually, Mom, I know all about your little arrangement with Michael and Sarah. Were you planning to tell me that half my rent money was going straight into their pockets? That's none of your business. Your brother needs. No, Mom, I interrupted, still chuckling. What my brother needs is to grow up and take responsibility for once in his life. I've moved out, found my own place. The apartment is all yours and Michael's now. You what? She screeched. You can't do this. We need that rent money. Well, I'm sure Michael will step up and start paying rent now that he's had time to get back on his feet. I can't wait to see how that works out for you. There was a moment of silence on the phone after my declaration. I could almost hear the gears turning in my mother's head as reality finally sank in. Their reliable source of income was gone, and all they had left was their unemployed son who had never paid a bill in his life. Emma, sweetie, Mom's voice suddenly turned sugary sweet, a tone I recognized from childhood when she wanted something. Let's not be hasty. We can work something out. What if we go back to the original rent amount? That was fair, wasn't it? I settled deeper into my new couch, the one I'd picked out myself, in my own apartment, where no one could kick me out of my bedroom. No, Mom, that's not going to happen. But Emma, we're family. You can't just. Family? I interrupted. Is that what you call it when you scheme behind my back to funnel my money to Michael? When you kick me out of my own bedroom while I'm paying all the bills? When you've spent my entire life treating me like an ATM while treating Michael like royalty? That's not fair, we've always. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up the phone and blocked their numbers. That was 6 months ago. My grandparents keep me updated on the situation, though I never ask, they just know I need to hear it, need to know I made the right choice. According to them, Michael, Sarah, and Tommy are still living in the apartment. They haven't paid a single month's rent. Mom and Dad are covering all the utilities, plus giving them spending money because the baby needs things. My brother still hasn't found a job. Apparently, there just aren't enough executive positions available for failed businessmen with a track record of bankruptcy. My new life is peaceful. I got another promotion at work, bought myself a car, and started taking evening classes for my MBA. My apartment is always clean, my food stays in my fridge until I want to eat it, and I sleep in my own bed every night. The other day, I ran into Sarah's cousin at the grocery store. She told me they're expecting another baby. I just smiled and wished them well, knowing that somewhere across town, my parents are probably already figuring out how to pay for another nursery. But that's not my problem anymore. For the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first. And it feels absolutely right. I'm Audrey, and I came into this world mere minutes after my twin sister Ashley. Those few minutes might as well have been years, given how differently our lives would unfold. Our parents, Linda and Robert Matthews, lived in a suburban house in Connecticut. Mom worked as a real estate agent, always dressed to impress, with her perfectly manicured nails and designer suits. Dad ran his own small accounting firm, spending most of his days buried in spreadsheets and tax forms. They seemed like your typical middle-class family, except for one thing, their obvious favoritism toward Ashley. I first noticed it when we were around 5. It was subtle at first, the kind of thing you might miss if you weren't living it every day. While other parents of twins dressed their children identically, celebrating their matching status, our parents made sure Ashley stood out. They'd take us shopping, and Ashley would get the new Nike sneakers while I got the clearance rack specials. She got the authentic Barbie dolls, I got the knockoffs from the dollar store. Even our birthday celebrations felt uneven. Ashley's portion of our shared cake always seemed bigger, her pile of presents always taller. These little moments piled up like stones in my pocket, weighing me down day after day. When Ashley got her ears pierced at 6, I wasn't even asked if I wanted mine done too. When she started taking ballet lessons, I was told we couldn't afford 2 sets of lessons. Somehow, though, there was always money for Ashley's growing list of activities: gymnastics, piano, art classes. Our early childhood photos tell the story better than I ever could. In every family picture, Ashley's front and center, usually in some frilly dress from an expensive children's boutique. I'm always somewhere in the background, wearing whatever was on clearance at Target, looking like an afterthought in my own family portraits. Maybe they just don't see it, I remember telling myself at night, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on our shared bedroom ceiling. Ashley had twice as many stars on her side of the room. Even the universe above our beds played favorites. The worst part wasn't the material differences, kids can survive without designer clothes and fancy toys. It was the way they looked at her versus how they looked at me. When Ashley spoke, they leaned in, hanging on every word. When I spoke, their eyes would drift, their attention already moving on to something else, someone else. Always to Ashley. As we approached school age, I held on to hope that things would change. Maybe once we were in school, once teachers and other adults were involved, our parents would see us both equally. Maybe they'd realize that having twins wasn't a burden but a blessing. Maybe they'd finally see me. I remember standing in front of our house that first morning, Ashley and I in our new uniforms, Mom taking pictures. For once, we looked identical, same plaid skirt, same white blouse, same navy cardigan. I thought maybe this was the beginning of change. "Girls, smile," Mom called out, but her eyes were fixed on Ashley. "Ashley, honey, tilt your head a little to the right. Perfect." The familiar ache in my chest returned. Even in identical clothes, she found ways to make Ashley shine brighter. Our classroom was bright and cheerful, with alphabet charts on the walls and tiny desks arranged in neat rows. Mrs. Thompson, our teacher, sat us alphabetically, Matthews and Matthews, side by side. I was thrilled. Finally, someone who would treat us the same. But after school, the old patterns emerged stronger than ever. Mom's silver SUV would pull up to the curb, and what happened next became a daily routine that felt like a twist of the knife. "Audrey, go straight home and start your homework," Mom would say, barely looking at me as I climbed out of the car. Then she'd turn to Ashley with a bright smile. "Ready for dance class, sweetheart?" Off they'd go, to ballet on Mondays, piano on Tuesdays, art class on Wednesdays, gymnastics on Thursdays, and drama club on Fridays. I'd watch them drive away, then walk into our empty house, the silence my only companion. I threw myself into my studies, thinking that maybe, just maybe, if I got perfect grades, they'd notice me. I'd sit at the kitchen table, methodically working through math problems, practicing my spelling words, reading ahead in our textbooks. The house would stay quiet for hours, until I'd hear the garage door open and their voices floating in, Ashley chattering about her latest achievement, Mom's proud responses echoing through the halls. "Mom, I got an A+ on my history test," I said one evening, holding up my paper. "That's nice, dear," she replied distractedly, helping Ashley unpack her dance bag. "Ashley, show Dad the new routine you learned today." I kept trying. Every perfect score, every teacher's praise, every gold star, I collected them like precious gems, hoping one day they'd be enough to make my parents' eyes light up the way they did for Ashley. Then came the night that changed everything. I was 12, heading to the kitchen for a glass of water after finishing my homework. Their voices drifted up from the den, where they often sat after Ashley went to bed. I normally ignored their late-night conversations, but something made me stop this time. "Sometimes I wonder if we made a mistake," Dad was saying, his voice heavy with something I couldn't identify. "What do you mean?" Mom asked. "Having twins. Ashley would have been enough. She's everything we could want in a daughter. But two of them." "I know what you mean," Mom sighed. "Ashley's special. She's meant for great things. But Audrey, she's just there. We would have been fine with just Ashley." The glass slipped from my hand, but I caught it before it could shatter. I wished I could catch my heart just as easily. In that moment, everything crystallized. The years of trying to earn their love, of hoping things would change, it all seemed so foolish now. They didn't want me. They never had. I was the unwanted twin, the extra daughter, the one they wished they didn't have. After that night, something shifted inside me. I stopped seeking approval and instead focused entirely on my studies. Turns out, freedom from constantly trying to please my parents cleared my mind in ways I never expected. My grades, already good, became exceptional. "Excellent analysis, Audrey," Mr. Peterson said one day in English class, holding up my essay on The Great Gatsby. "Class, this is exactly the kind of deep thinking I'm looking for." I could feel Ashley tensing up beside me, her pencil tapping against her desk in that aggressive way it did when she was angry. I kept my eyes forward, but I could see her face turning red from the corner of my eye. Similar scenes played out in other classes. Math, science, history, it didn't matter. The more the teachers praised my work, the more Ashley seethed. It came to a head in chemistry when Mrs. Rodriguez asked me to tutor other students. That evening, I heard Ashley's voice from downstairs, "Mom, the teachers are being mean to me. They always praise Audrey and make me look bad. They're doing it on purpose." The next day, Mom stormed into school, designer handbag swinging, heels clicking against the linoleum floors. I watched from the hallway as she marched into Principal Williams' office, where they'd called in Mrs. Chen, our class teacher. "I want to know why your teachers are discriminating against my daughter," Mom demanded. Mrs. Chen, bless her, stayed calm and professional. "Mrs. Matthews, let me show you something." She pulled out our progress logs, laying them side by side. "Here are both girls' records. Audrey consistently scores in the top percentile in all subjects. Ashley's grades are." "Are you suggesting my Ashley isn't smart?" Mom interrupted. "Not at all. I'm merely pointing out that Audrey's academic achievements are. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're all biased against Ashley." No amount of evidence could convince her. When she came home that day, I overheard her telling Dad that the teachers were obviously prejudiced against their precious Ashley. By 16, I was tired of asking for pocket money and watching Ashley get hundreds of dollars just for existing. I applied for a job at the Coffee Bean, a cute cafe just a few blocks from our house. It wasn't glamorous work, but I loved the independence it gave me. Plus, my coworkers actually appreciated my presence, a novel experience in my life. Ashley, of course, couldn't let me have even this small victory. "Oh my God, you're actually going to be a waitress," she sneered one morning, watching me put on my uniform. "That's so common. Mom, can you believe Audrey's going to serve people food?" Mom just made a disapproving noise, sliding another $100 bill across the table to Ashley for her shopping needs. That's when I remembered something I'd overheard years ago, a heated phone conversation where Mom had yelled, "I don't want anything to do with you anymore. You're embarrassing with your tiny house and your budget clothes. I've moved up in the world." She'd been talking to her parents, my grandparents. The ones I'd never met because they weren't good enough for her new lifestyle. That evening, while Mom and Ashley were at another shopping spree, I snuck into Mom's home office. In her address book, under D4, Do Not Contact, I found an address in the older part of town. The next day, instead of heading to my afternoon shift at the cafe, I took a bus to a small blue house with a well-tended garden. My heart was pounding as I walked up the path. I had no idea what to expect, but I knew I had to try. I raised my hand to knock on the door. The door opened, revealing an elderly couple. The woman had gray hair tied back in a neat bun, and the man wore wire-rimmed glasses. They looked at me with confusion until I spoke. "Hi, I'm Audrey Matthews. I think you're my grandparents." Their jaws dropped simultaneously. The woman, my grandmother, put her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God, Frank, it's really her." They invited me in, and suddenly I was sitting in their cozy living room, drinking tea from delicate cups while they couldn't stop staring at me. "You look just like your mother did at your age," Grandma said softly. Before she changed. That first visit turned into many more. I'd tell my parents I was working extra shifts at the cafe, but instead, I'd spend hours with my grandparents, bringing them pastries and cookies from work. They were wonderful listeners, genuinely interested in my life, my studies, my dreams. For the first time, I felt seen. Then came graduation day. The ceremony was typically Matthew's family style, all focus on Ashley. When they called my name as valedictorian, my parents barely clapped, but when Ashley walked across the stage, they hooped and hollered like she'd just won an Olympic medal. I should have been prepared for what came the next day, but somehow, they still managed to shock me. "Girls, we have exciting news," Mom announced at breakfast, practically bouncing in her seat. "We're celebrating graduation in Hawaii." My heart lifted for a moment. Despite everything, I thought maybe, just maybe, this one time. "Honey," Mom turned to me, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "we only got 3 tickets, for us and Ashley. You understand, right? Someone needs to watch the house, and you have your job at the cafe." Ashley didn't even try to hide her smirk as she stirred her orange juice. "Don't worry, sis. I'll send you lots of pictures of me living my best life on the beach." The next morning, I watched from our front door as they loaded their expensive luggage into the taxi. Ashley turned back, waving with exaggerated enthusiasm. "I'll make sure to send you beautiful photos from Hawaii. You can look at them between serving tables." As soon as the taxi disappeared around the corner, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called my grandparents. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over when I heard Grandma's voice. They went to Hawaii without me," I managed to get out between sobs. "They just left me here like I'm nothing." "Oh, sweetheart," Grandma's voice was soft but firm. "Come over right now. We'll have our own graduation celebration." I drove to their house, still wiping away tears. As I turned onto their street, I noticed something unusual, a brand new Mercedes C-Class sedan parked in their driveway, gleaming in the summer sun. It looked completely out of place next to their modest home. Whose car is that? I asked as I walked up to their front porch. Grandpa's eyes twinkled as he held up a set of keys. Yours. Happy graduation, Audrey. I stood there, mouth open, sure I'd misheard him. What? But how? I thought. Sit down, dear, Grandma patted the porch swing. We have something to tell you. They explained how, after Mom cut ties with them, they'd invested their modest savings in several tech startups. Those investments had paid off spectacularly, but they'd chosen to keep living simply in their familiar home. Your mother left us because she thought we were too poor, too beneath her, Grandpa said, shaking his head. The irony is, we're probably wealthier than she is now. We just don't feel the need to show it off. We've been waiting for the right moment to help you, Grandma added. And this seemed perfect. I hugged them both, overwhelmed by their generosity and love. They ushered me inside, where they'd prepared a beautiful graduation lunch. The table was set with their best china, and a congratulations graduate banner hung across the dining room. Over homemade lasagna and garlic bread, they asked about my college plans. Actually, I said, feeling proud, I got accepted to Princeton with a full academic scholarship. I start in the fall. Their faces lit up with genuine joy, so different from my parents' lukewarm reaction when I'd told them. That's wonderful, Grandma exclaimed. But what about housing? The scholarship covers that? Well, I was planning to live in the dorms. Nonsense, Grandpa cut in. We'll get you a nice apartment near campus. Something safe and comfortable where you can focus on your studies. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Ashley, sending a photo of herself lounging on a Hawaiian beach, captioned, "Wish you were here, not." I looked at the message, then at my grandparents' loving faces, then at the keys to my new car sitting next to my plate. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the lesser twin. 2 weeks crawled by. I spent my days working at the cafe, visiting my grandparents, and preparing for college. Each evening, my phone would buzz with another notification, Ashley posing on different beaches, dining at expensive restaurants, or lounging by infinity pools. Each photo was accompanied by increasingly obnoxious captions, living my best life while someone serves coffee. This is what success looks like. Some people vacation in Hawaii, others just dream about it. Then came the day of their return. I was in the living room, pretending to read a book while watching through the window. The taxi pulled up, and I couldn't help but smile as I saw their reactions unfold in slow motion. Mom noticed it first. She stopped so abruptly that Ashley walked right into her, dropping her designer beach bag onto the concrete driveway. Dad, struggling with their expensive matching luggage set, nearly tripped over them both. What is that? Mom's voice carried through the front window, high-pitched and sharp. She was pointing at the Mercedes as if it might bite her, her perfectly manicured finger trembling slightly. Is that a new C-Class? Dad stammered, his jaw hanging open. The latest model? I took my time walking to the front door, enjoying every second of their confusion. Their tan seemed to pale with each step I took. When I stepped onto the porch, they all turned to stare at me like they were seeing a ghost. Whose car is that? Dad demanded, his face red from both the Hawaiian sun and shock. I twirled the keys around my finger, the way Ashley always did with her designer purse straps when she was showing off. Mine. Ashley let out a bark of laughter, but I could hear the uncertainty in it. Yeah, right. Like you could afford that on your waitress salary. What did you do, steal it, rob the cafe? Or are you just parking it for some rich customer? Actually, I said, savoring each word like the expensive chocolates they'd never shared with me, it was a graduation gift. From Grandma and Grandpa. The color drained from Mom's tanned face so fast I thought she might faint. What? You know, your parents? The ones you were too embarrassed to talk to because they were too poor? Those grandparents. Dad turned to Mom so fast I thought he might get whiplash. Linda, call your parents. Right now. His voice had that same demanding tone he used when ordering at restaurants. Mom's hand shook as she pulled out her phone, her French manicure catching the sunlight. She didn't even bother with pleasantries when Grandma answered, putting the phone on speaker without realizing it. "Where did you get the money for that car?" she demanded, her voice echoing in our front yard. I could hear Grandma's voice through the phone, calm and slightly amused. "Oh, hello to you too, dear. Enjoying your expensive vacation?" I saw all the lovely photos Ashley posted. "The Royal Hawaiian Hotel looks lovely this time of year." "Don't change the subject. How could you afford to buy Audrey a Mercedes?" "Well, sweetheart," Grandma's voice dripped with satisfaction, "it seems you underestimated us. Those embarrassing parents you were so ashamed of? We're quite comfortable now. More than comfortable, actually. We're rich." Mom's entire demeanor changed instantly, her voice becoming syrupy sweet. "Mom, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we put the past behind us. Family is so important, after all." "Is it?" Grandma's voice was cool. "Of course. And speaking of family," Mom's eyes darted to Ashley, who was already preening. "You have another granddaughter who would love to get to know you. She could really use a nice car too, maybe even something a little more special?" Grandpa's laugh crackled through the speaker. "You mean the granddaughter you just took to Hawaii while leaving Audrey alone? That granddaughter?" Mom's face flushed. "That's not. I mean, look, as grandparents, you should treat the girls equally. They're the same age, after all. It's only fair they get the same gifts." "Equally?" Grandma's voice turned sharp. "That's rich coming from you, Linda. Parents should love their children equally too. But that hasn't been the case in your household, has it?" The line went dead. Mom stared at her phone for a moment before turning to me, her expression hardening. "Audrey, you need to give that car to your sister." "Excuse me?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Ashley needs a good car for college," Dad jumped in. "She got accepted to State University. She needs reliable transportation. You're just working at that cafe, you don't need anything this fancy." Ashley was already walking toward the Mercedes, hand outstretched. "Give me the keys, sis. You know, I'll look better driving it anyway." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of it all was just too much. "This is my car," I said firmly. "And I'm not giving it to anyone." Dad stepped forward, his face red with anger. "If you don't give that car to your sister right now, you can get out of this house." "Funny you should say that," I said, walking to the Mercedes. I popped the trunk, revealing my packed suitcases and boxes. I'd been ready to leave for days. Their mouths hung open as I pulled an envelope from my purse and held it up. "Oh, and by the way, I won't be serving coffee much longer. I got accepted to Princeton on a full scholarship." Ashley's shriek could probably be heard 3 blocks away. Mom stumbled backward like I'd slapped her. Dad just stood there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. I got into my car, the leather seats still new enough to creak slightly. Through the windshield, I could see their shocked faces, their perfect family fantasy crumbling before their eyes. Those last few weeks of summer at my grandparents' house were the happiest I'd ever experienced. Every morning, I'd wake up to the smell of Grandma's coffee and the sound of Grandpa humming as he read the newspaper. No walking on eggshells, no competing for attention, no feeling like an unwanted shadow. Just peace. Moving to Princeton was bittersweet. I hugged my grandparents goodbye, promising to call every day, and set off in my Mercedes with everything I owned. The drive to New Jersey felt like crossing a boundary between my old life and my new one. My grandparents had found me a beautiful little apartment just 10 minutes from campus. Nothing flashy, but worlds better than any dorm room, hardwood floors, big windows, and even a small balcony where I could study. They'd insisted on paying the rent, despite my protests. I still wanted some independence, though, so I got a part-time job at a local coffee shop. The irony wasn't lost on me, still serving coffee, but this time by choice, not necessity. My co-workers were mostly other students, and for the first time in my life, I found myself making real friends. One Sunday afternoon, about a month into the semester, Grandma called with some interesting news. "Your parents showed up at our door yesterday," she said. My heart skipped a beat. What did they want? Oh, the usual. Linda was all smiles and fake apologies, asking about our financial situation and hinting about Ashley's upcoming birthday. Your father kept looking around the house, probably trying to guess our net worth. What did you tell them? Grandpa's voice joined in on the line. We told them that we'd already decided what to do with our money. It's all going to you. I could picture their faces. How did they take that? Let's just say Linda's smile didn't look so genuine after that, Grandma chuckled. We asked them not to come back. That evening, I blocked their numbers and all their social media accounts. Ashley's too. I knew what would come next: sudden declarations of love and regret, offers to start fresh as a family. But I didn't need their kind of family anymore. Now, sitting in my constitutional law class, taking notes and actually enjoying the complexity of the material, I sometimes think about that little girl who used to pray for her parents' love. I wish I could tell her that she'd find something better, not just love, but respect, support, and the freedom to be herself. My phone buzzes quietly in my pocket, probably my study group confirming our meeting at the library later. Or maybe it's Jake, that cute guy from my psychology class who keeps asking to get coffee, not at my cafe, thankfully. It's such a normal life. No drama, no constant comparisons, no feeling like I'm not enough. Just me, my studies, my friends, and my future stretching out ahead of me, full of possibilities.